Aaron was commenting that he loves that our first slide has somebody in a Batman sweatshirt. I do too. Gotta have a little superhero in our life. Right. All right. Well, what do you say, Aaron? Should we go ahead and get started? All right. So I'll do my last little thing that says that, hi, today you're being recorded, but most importantly, I'm going to say, welcome. So today we're talking about a new solution for a big challenge that a lot of our Rhode Island manufacturers face. And that is, where are the workers? Finding and keeping skilled workers. So it's not new news to say that workforce is a challenge in the United States, because statistics from nationwide polls have made it clear. You see those up on that screen. It is tough to find qualified applicants. And in addition, the statistics from our local research shows it very clearly as well. So we surveyed Rhode Island manufacturers in 2022 about the state of manufacturing, and finding and upskilling workers were seen as the top two factors that were limiting the growth of manufacturing companies and of our whole sector in this state. I'm going to be very interested to see. We're currently running a new survey. Once again, revisiting these questions to see whether or not that has remained one of the top two challenges. And how were they going to address this challenge? Well, manufacturers told us they were going to counter it in a number of ways. One was increasing wages, or offering more or better training, or offering more or better benefits. And all of those changes that they were talking about really would affect job quality. So we'll do a quick poll, and you can just raise your in-person hands or type into chat and tell us who currently measures their product quality. Maria, are you measuring product quality at your company?
Yes,
absolutely.
I do. We
Rick,
do,
how about you? You're muted, but I think you're saying yes, you measure product quality. Looked like a happy face.
Yeah, that's correct.
Well, then here's my next question is, who's actually measuring job quality currently?
That's where performance reviews come into play, but there's more to it than that.
Absolutely. And I love that you said that, Maria, because performance reviews are regularly one of the tools that people tell us when they say, yep, I'm measuring job quality. But what it measures is the quality of the job the person is doing. When we're kind of talking about job quality today, we're talking about offering an experience for workers that is going to meet their needs. Is the job you offer graded quality by them? And really, when we sit there and we talk about this demand for workers being so high and getting even higher, right, as federal and state dollars are flowing into our sector, we've got more than 2 million jobs that could go unfilled if we cannot convince people that the quality of the jobs that we offer are attractive so that they want to pursue the manufacturing careers. If they don't feel like we're going to offer that quality job, if they don't feel like you will be the employer they want to choose to work for, then they're going to vote with their feet. We want them to point their feet at your company. So that's why employer of choice, and that's why job quality. And an employer of choice, we want to define that label for today, is an organization that people want to work for, because it's a company that's highly sought after by new candidates. And it's one where our existing employees are excited to keep coming in to do their best work so that they get those really good scores on your performance reviews, right? And it means that the companies don't have to spend as much on recruiting because satisfied employees do the recruiting for them. All of these are some of the substantiated benefits that you can get from being an employer of choice offering quality jobs. So here's what we'll be covering today. It's the drivers of job quality. It's the Job Quality Toolkit, and it's how to use that toolkit to measure job quality from the worker's perspective, as well as from our perspective of the employees and their growth within our skilled jobs. Let's make this an informal thing. So anytime you have a question, please holler it, put it in chat. And if we don't get to it during our conversation today, as part of the natural flow, we'll also have time for Q&A at the end. So for those of you who have not met me yet, I'm Erin Reed. I'm the marketing lead for Polaris MEP, but our really featured presenter today is Erin Clemens, who is our workforce manager for Polaris MEP. So we've got the Erin and Erin show today. And one of the things that I really love about what Erin brings to his role as workforce manager for Polaris MEP is his actual past experience. One of the things that he did was work in hospitality as the manager of a Providence hotel. Isn't that right, Erin?
This is true. 15 years of managing venues and the people that run those venues for you all as guests. So restaurants, hotels, all sorts of things. I also want to welcome in Charlene, who joined and is with Rhode Island Commerce, and make sure that Maria and Rick, you know who's on the call here. So obviously Erin and Aaron running the show. Lindsay Brickle, I believe you both have interacted with. Maria, I'm sure you have in the past, leading our community partnership efforts here at Polaris MEP. Charlene, also on the call on screen mute right now, is with Rhode Island Commerce. So she might have some interesting tidbits to add on there into the conversation as we go as well. But specific to my past in hospitality and how I led with job quality before we had a toolkit, I recognize that the drivers that wound up being listed in this toolkit were exactly what I was leading with, which are ways, as Erin said, to help to really manage the experience of your team, your staff, your precious human resource, so that they are truly managing the output to the same level of quality that you're getting, right? They are the ones leading the charge on the floor. They're the ones getting everything done. And that job quality really goes into how well they feel resourced to do their job, how valued they feel with doing their job, and then all of that trickles into the very obvious things like pay, flexibility, training, things like that. So we use a lot of that frontline. I'm sure, as you can imagine, when it comes to hotels, restaurants, there are roles that are both customer facing, right out front, your sales roles, right? And then there are the operational roles that really keep the machine going. And they all require pretty much all of the same attention to detail that an operation like yours does. So when we talk about, let's see here, going.
Erin gets to give a little bit of a down and dirty on Polaris MEP, even though obviously we've had the great fortune of partnering with you both.
Yeah, and the two of you have worked with us already. So you need less of an introduction into how we work, but perhaps a reminder that as a resource for Rhode Island manufacturers, one of the biggest things in our toolkit that we bring is that P part in manufacturing extension partnership, which is the partnership. We do pull from a national network in order to help refine your process, build a talent pipeline, break into new markets, do all the things that you're asking for, as you're aware, because many of you also have operations in other states, right? And in some cases in other countries. You need all of these same things across the board. So we do really pull from our national network of 50 centers, plus one in Puerto Rico. Our public-private partnerships here in the state happen to be very strong. And our braided funding structure through folks like Lindsay Brickle, who have really worked to pull in both federal and state funds, as well as private sector, nonprofit stuff coming in to really strengthen what we're able to do. So MEP is definitely a key part of the name, and I should hope by now that that really makes sense with what you've seen us deliver for you folks. Go to the next slide. So MEPs are obviously totally demand driven. We exist because you exist, and so that we can help to create a more robust manufacturing sector for us all, right? So we certainly need to find ways to help manufacturers understand and identify their top priorities so that we can help you address those priorities. Pew Research, for example, has found that if employees don't feel like they belong, they will leave, of course, right? And belonging is one of those things that may feel very hard to make tangible, to define and to figure out, let alone to manage. But often, if an employee does not feel like they belong, the only thing driving their decision are the dollars and cents, which is where you get folks leaving an otherwise perfectly good job that they've already put in a lot of time to train for, already gotten used to, leaving for what are often relatively small gains, 50 cents more an hour up the road, right? And you wonder why they're willing to start over. That's something we can dig into and help with these drivers, because these 8 drivers really help you to manage that experience. Yeah. So I'm sure the 2 of you have heard of the Baldrige Excellence. You've probably done a bunch of these staff trainings, right? And taken some of your personality tests and things like that. So there's a famous Malcolm Baldrige National Quality Award. It's been given out since '87 to companies that perform at a high level of excellence when it comes to quality. And Baldrige also studies excellence in performance, leadership, and management. And like the MEPs, Baldrige is founded by our federal folks, NIST. So they really do a great job of capturing best practices that companies can use from, again, across the country. So they use that framework to create a toolkit with strategies and actions that can be used to make you an employer of choice. And so those are the 8 identifiers that I was talking about. You've got recruitment and hiring, which is always top of mind for folks. We'll dig into that a little bit more. Benefits, pretty straightforward, especially for you, Maria, dealing with that every day, figuring out which sorts of benefits are most appealing, what sort of flexibility you can offer within your benefits package, right? Some folks are hard-pressed to figure out what they're going to do for childcare. Some folks, right, are hard-pressed to figure out what they're going to do for their medical needs, right? Some folks need an excessive PTO because they have family abroad, right? And they need to know that their job is secure, even if they have to go away for an extended period of time, right? So the different things that you have to balance every day are exactly what they've identified is part of the game that we play to figure it all out. DEIA is what, if I were rewriting that, I would call that belonging part, right? So thinking less so about the intersection of the different demographics that make us. We just had International Women's Day, right? And you know, Women's Month, right? And then it was Black History Month just before that, right? All of those things are highlighted celebrations of what you should feel daily. You should ultimately feel like you belong, like there's a clarity of purpose for you, and like you belong there, doing your part to carry that purpose along, right? And DEIA goes into helping that, helping with belonging, as does empowerment and representation. That empowerment and representation comes from seeing yourself reflected, right, in your senior leadership, and in the communication that goes across. That empowerment there comes from knowing that you can raise your voice to speak, whether it's with a question, comment, or concern, right? So all very important. Job security and working conditions, that's something I'll say I've noted we've got down pat. The working conditions, because we've got these folks called OSHA that will call us out on it if we don't. So of all things, as an industry, 9 times out of 10, you're looking at working conditions right off the bat before you even have anybody in your facility, right? So that's something we do quite well on the top. Organizational culture, right? How we're structured, what we do, what kind of connection line level associates have to senior leadership, right? Things like that all go into it. Pay is pretty direct and obvious, but less so direct and obvious how transparent we are about pay and how we plan around pay, milestones, and growth. So the old way of not speaking about it because you might pay one newcomer one thing and another newcomer another, right, has actually created uncertainty that makes you feel like perhaps you don't belong, right? Yeah, right. So it's that uncertainty that's the problem there with pay. And the transparency is really helpful, and the clear milestoning, right? Perhaps we start you at 1, and if you hit a milestone, you're eligible for this, right? It's super helpful. And that also connects to your skills and career advancement. That milestoning allows you to see and forecast what you're actually able to pay for a role even in a best case scenario, that business is booming, the orders are coming in, the orders are shipping out, right? What can we afford to pay? How can we progress a person, right? What is the real room for career advancement here, right? So that again, a person doesn't have to guess about whether or not they will get a promotion because they are liked or if they will be overlooked because they are disliked, right? They understand what they have to do, and that clarity there in spelling that out is really helpful. So as you're seeing with these 8 drivers, I should think they all make sense. Would you agree? They do, right?
You do, they make sense.
It makes sense. And if you move ahead, yeah. So this is a great quote here. Job quality is not just about the job, it's the combination of those key drivers, right? Pay and benefits matter, and we know that. And so do a multitude of other factors like workplace safety and health, right? So together, everything really distinguishes an employer as an employer of choice. And that's what I mean by the employees who will leave for very nominal gains, right? Have not identified their current employer as an employer of choice, right? Because the employee that simply wants more money, right, but feels like they belong, right, feels like a part of the operation, will speak to their supervisor about that concern, right? If there's the opportunity to speak about it and to say, well, what I need is more money in my life, which is different than I don't think I'm being paid enough, which means I'm not being respected for the work I put in, which means, right? So those are all different concerns, right? What an individual needs for their life and their ability to voice that need is far different than those 8 drivers working together to create a situation where an employee can speak up about it and get their needs met, right? To some degree, right? We would all like more money, but it doesn't mean that more money can simply be thrown in the pot just because it's requested, right? But again, those other 8 drivers allow you to spell out what can be done for a person, right? Because you're thinking of all those pieces together. We can move on.
It's that whole package, that whole picture, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I love the way Aaron was kind of explaining, that sense of belonging, but then when you bring all these other things in there. But back to kind of our earlier, somewhat cheeky poll about most of us know how to measure the quality of our product, but it's really hard to figure out sometimes how to measure how we're doing on those 8 drivers that make up the quality of our job that we're offering. And so to get that whole picture, that's where we really reached across the MEP National Network and looked at what NIST had to offer us as well to develop an assessment that could allow a company to view how it's doing through those 8 drivers. And then that assessment, which is 32 questions, less than 5 minutes, really looks at, okay, when the report comes back, what are some of the key areas? Where are there gaps or concerns, right? If I've been rated highly along here, but then this one's a little bit lower, what does that say? Where could I go through? So having that assessment allows us to be informed when creating a plan that's choosing strategies and actions from the toolkit that fit your pain points or your company.
That's right, because we're not a one size fits all, right? Operation, we're not a one size fits all sector, right? So the solutions certainly need to be using strategies that fit your individual operations. And that's a great thing about the way this is set up. It's certainly not a straitjacket.
Absolutely right, Aaron. I also love the idea that they recommend that the assessment be taken by about 3 team leaders, because that way you get a little bit of a more well-rounded perspective. Even in a company as small as Polaris MEP, we like to joke that, Aaron is part of the workforce division and I'm part of the marketing division. I'm a marketer, so I believe everybody's part of the marketing division. But it does show that we each have kind of our own lens by which we view this. So it's important to kind of have that better perspective, a wider range of perspective when we're planning and then committing to some measurable goals.
Why don't you hit that next slide? Exactly.
Yeah.
And show you what we mean about those 32 simple questions taking less than 5 minutes. They are directly based on those 8 drivers we just talked about. And we recommend the 3 team leaders take it, right? You do get a report, right? A copy of which is emailed to us, unless for any reason you were to click that you absolutely did not want anyone to see it, but we imagine that you'd like to work together on it. So you would have the opportunity to review that report with us, right? And second steps are now putting some of those findings into action through a little bit more research, right? We can gather more data. We can take the human capital
Talent and culture
HCG
survey.
there we go. Thank you. Talent and culture survey, which will also help us gather data from the employee point of view anonymously. They do not have to report who they are. But some really interesting findings come out of putting those two things together, right? Like scenarios where you believe an employee is doing a fantastic job and requires little to no attention, which is great. However, that same employee, this is a real case scenario, believes that they are arms flailing Kermit the Frog every day, and they know that they're valued, but they believe that they need a lot of help and training, and they are actually unsure in themselves, whereas you thought they had it all in tow, right? In scenarios like that, that's a prime example of the employee that gets promoted to supervisor because they are viewed as somebody who's doing a great job, but they actually are not at all confident in their skills. And they hit a lot of problems being a supervisor of other people when they're actually not clear in themselves, right, about that. So this really helps you to suss that out, again, anonymously, right? It helps you to find, and then you can bring it back to engaging with your employees to find things out.
I love the example that Aaron just gave, and we're giving another couple of little mini case studies about the Job Quality Toolkit and this kind of first steps of the online assessment, because a critical part of that, as it is with the jobs that you guys do within operations and other sections, is that we know that we have so many personal individuals with all their own needs and their concerns, et cetera. We need to have a standard process that makes sure that we are consistently delivering the right experiences and consistently have the right listening channels in place and the right supports in place. So this assessment is not something that gets put into a drawer, but rather it gets turned into something that allows you to put it in action. So I'll show you the pathway that has been outlined for using the Job Quality Toolkit. And again, the Job Quality Toolkit itself has hundreds of pieces of advice, proven strategies, best practices for actions. But again, how do you take that and customize it so that it's actually actionable for your company? Well, I'm going to show you the pathway, and then Aaron's going to show a couple of mini case studies. So really the pathway starts with completing that online assessment. And then what we do internally, unless you said, I absolutely do not want this information shared with Polaris MEP, is that we review the assessment internally. We do that again, because just like you've had 2 or 3 of your leaders take the assessment to provide a well-rounded view, our team wants to make sure that they're looking at it and getting a well-rounded view as well, and thinking about how these results can align with what we know are the manufacturer priorities and strengths, and also with the Job Quality Toolkit itself. So then that becomes a collaborative discussion, not a salesy one, but rather a consultation that is designed to give you some valuable insight. You got this report now, and you've got some additional insights. And through that, be able to come to a consensus on some priorities. And also, is there a desire to act? I joked with Maria earlier that, you know, one of the things we kind of expected was that the employers who would show up to today's discussion of the Job Quality Toolkit are the ones who are already committed to job quality. So we know you have a commitment to this and a desire to act, but it's developing that action plan, a little bit of a roadmap that is what is needed to get you to be able to bring that commitment to life. And that roadmap will likely include your whole team at different parts. And so if there's support that's needed for the team, or if there's things that are done internally, that's going to be clear in the roadmap so you can reach your goals related to that. So this is the Job Quality Toolkit pathway, starting from that assessment, drawing from proven practices to create a customized plan, and then be able to see the results from that. But Aaron, you were going to give some examples of clients who wielded the Job Quality Toolkit going forward.
So this one, real hypothetical. was a client with a little bit more than 50 employees, right? They took the online assessment and their report was pretty positive. The lower grades were in areas of worker input. And if you remember, it's the leaders who take that online assessment first, right? So those same leaders scored themselves a bit lower on showing they care, right? That was one of the areas that they wanted to improve in, right, as leaders. So there we go. We moved ahead with the talent and culture survey we talked about because they realized they did want to further the input and really figure out how to make actionable what they found in that first step. So they took the confidential survey of employees available in multiple languages, postings around with QR codes there to make it easy for folks to take. So it gathers data that can back up what the leaders answered in that assessment. Or sometimes in some line items, it counters their perception, right? And sometimes it surfaces other insights that are very important. So no matter what, when you ask employees what they think and do, do it in a safe and respectful manner, you're already empowering right off the top, right? So it's already a great first step to take, regardless of what action items they lead to. And in this case, the Talent and Culture Survey confirmed that all employees wanted more ways to share their ideas, and the employees wanted their leaders to learn how to listen more effectively, which, that language is listen more effectively. They didn't feel that they weren't listened to. They didn't feel that there was a clear and effective system, right, to have true ideas shared, considered, and then implemented where appropriate. So how to listen more effectively. It's really interesting because it shows that there is a level of engagement that the employees came to expect. They expected to be able to say what they thought, but weren't quite sure where those ideas progressed past, right, being able to volunteer it to their supervisors. So it really does uncover some fun stuff. The agreed upon approach was we picked some DDI certificate courses because they work with any size group, any type of manufacturer, and they're proven to create positive change. And we have plenty of success stories and plenty of data on that. So we're comfortable saying it. We're holding off right now on the TWI job instruction and job relations because they're more focused on the need of pathways for advancement. And we want to wait until this round of training is done because the client has some operational priorities underway. And that makes total sense. That's just a great way to show that there's plenty that can be done, but it's important not to bite off too much change at once, right? And this also shows how the action plan is tailored to each client, right? This is what made sense in response to what they found. Example number 2 is a much smaller shop with fewer than 10 employees. And they gave themselves high marks across the board with 2 notable lower grades, which was addressing workers' feelings about job security. Not surprising, being such a small shop, right? Where do we go from here? How do I progress, right? What happens, right, if the owner sells, right? Plan for succession to replace key people, right? Because it's shop with less than 10 people, pretty much everyone is key. Internal review insights were very positive for the culture that already existed, right? There seemed to be open doors, open minds. The agreed upon approach was to leverage our tools for succession planning, right? After the talent and culture survey. And note that succession planning isn't just about the owner, right? It's about what happens when the person who has been there the longest simply retires, right? In good standing, right? We have a lot of shops that have done a lot of flexible things with offering a scheduled retirement to a person in an effort to also have them come back super part-time, right? Just to help in a training capacity, right? So they've said, we know you intend to retire in a few years. We're going to get ahead of that. We're going to talk about that, right? How about we start now bringing in someone, reducing your hours, right? And crossing over with this new person that's going to be very green, but is going to learn from the subject matter expert in the room, right? While we have you. So in this case, with such a small team, they had 2 team members who represented pretty single points of failure, meaning if one was out sick, the whole line shut down, right? If one wanted to go on vacation, the team stress levels were through the roof because subject matter expert, right? The person who knows how to fix the thing, the person who knows how to kick it to make it work just right, right? So there was some really good room to work together on that. Anecdotally, the employer, this is the example where the employer thought that one of their, again, key of the 9 people that work there, team members, needed no training. And the employee themselves felt pretty lost and actually wanted more training, right? So it was something that they just would not have known if they hadn't gone through the process.
Absolutely. And Erin, I love the fact that the same, kind of, again, assessment, but brought 2 very different approaches, right, for the company when they went through. One, which is really focusing on defining career pathways, and the other one were said, it's less about the pathway, more about the cross training right now to reduce that stress and to make sure that we go through. But once they tackled that first thing, that's when they started to say, okay, how do we address job security and job growth? Even in a group of 9, we can do that. So how do we do that? So I guess, again, we wanted to present, really the idea of job quality and how it figures into being an employer of choice, and then how the toolkit can support that. But really, this is about you. So are there any questions that you have about the job quality toolkit, about how it's being applied within manufacturing in Rhode Island? It's your turn to ask questions.
I have no questions. I mean, you were very thorough on explaining what it is. Now it's just really a matter of getting our leaders also aligned with what we have to offer.
Oh, Maria, you've hit on a really good point there too, is that's an often common question, is that there might be one person internally who thinks, yeah, we have to look at this, but how do we get the other leaders aligned and committed to this? Erin?
Well, yeah, it's interesting that this tool kind of does exactly that, right? So the buy-in to make the jump to do the tool, sure. One thing in your pocket is that Polaris MEP and NIST right now are subsidizing this tool. At some point in the future, it's going to be just another thing in a portfolio that comes with a cost. Right now, subsidizing it. So you do have in your toolkit that you can say there's this thing that's going on and it's free right now. We should do it. If nothing else, it will give us data, right? If nothing else. And we know, data is king. So if nothing else, right now it is being subsidized. And so it's a great time to use it. And I'm curious from you, Maria, because I know this is your department, how closely you measure things like your turnover rates and your cost of new hires and your, all that kind of stuff, right? When you're looking at like the real baked in costs of all of these really normal things that are going to happen.
Well, I myself, I provide the details to my directors who don't work here at the facility. But we do take a look at that, and our corporate office actually every 2 years provides employee surveys. However, what you're offering is a little better because the employee services from corporate, they don't really capture the manufacturing side. They capture more of the retail side because we're one in retail, right? So they're really focusing in on how can we do better? Yes, how can the managers do better and get that guidelines for the managers? But then it really is, how can we do better so we can increase sales? And this is the reason why we're here too, is because we want the sales to increase, because if they don't increase, we're not going to be having a job here, right? So that's definitely the route that we want to go. But at the same point, we really don't capture, I feel, our manufacturing people, our staff, our employees that, as Aaron was saying, some people, we think they have it, but they're panicking because they're the ones that we go to all the time, but they might be the most boisterous. They're seeking the answer, but they don't have the confidence to give out the information the way that they should, and this will show us that.
Mhm.
A really good point, Maria. You know, it's interesting too, because this job quality toolkit coming out of Baldrige was the drivers and the toolkit apply to any type of business. But then that second step that Aaron had talked about with the talent culture survey, that's much more manufacturing specific. And with larger teams, we ran it with one client where they did it line by line. And it was very interesting seeing some of the insights that came out of that as well. You know, overall, great work culture, some chinks in the chain over here, some weaknesses there on specific lines. And it was wonderful because it took what could have been a potentially scary thing and instead said, oh, we can focus in right here, not in a way that was punitive, but rather in a way that was constructive and built up that line so it could fulfill what everybody else had. Yeah. Good question.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. And a good point that we didn't mention, as flexible as we were saying it ultimately is that we've had clients do it, like you just said, line. I was going to say department, right? We've had them do it just by department, you know, by area at a time, right? And move at a pace that worked for them. So that makes total sense. That makes total sense. How are you two seeing things move with your forecasting around pay, right? We hear a lot about no one wants to work, right? We hear that statement, right? And the like, where are we supposed to find the skilled, you know, quality workers? How are you guys seeing that go kind of with your pipeline hires right now?
I guess you can, let's put it, we're always looking at the market. So our corporate group compensation, they're always looking at the market. And when we're struggling to get the talent in, we do reach out, they'll do another comparison. And I feel that what they're bringing back is compatible to what is on the market. And I also feel that Tiffany actually does well in their compensation package, getting the people in the door, experienced people as well. With the pay transparency, you know, we have to let them know what, you know, the position may be paying, and so, or should say is paying. So we're on par, and we are very much in line. Well, sometimes they're over they over ask, overreaching, and who doesn't want to be, right? We're
As
always
generous as they
thinking
can.
more valuable than what the position that we have to offer. But you know, sometimes it goes right through. They do get that that compensation, or we just negotiate. It's a negotiation thing right now. I mean,
so you're constantly analyzing that data, though, is what I'm hearing.
We have to, and if not, then we're not going to be competitive, you know, because right now in Rhode Island, the craft people, we have, you know, the smaller companies that have the same type of craft people. So we're always competing against each other. We don't want that. We don't, you know, we want to make sure that we keep our people happy with their pay. We're always trying to make sure that our people are engaged. You know, you brought up the DE&A, we call it the DE and B, like the belonging part of it. So we are very much in line with that. We have what we call an employee resource group here, a women's resource group, but we encompass all of it. We encompass the Hispanic, we encompass the Asian, and the Black Americans. So so we always try to ensure that there's inclusion involved in a lot of that we do. You know, we celebrate them and their culture. So I think we're a little bit there, but you will always have those individuals that may feel that we're not doing enough. So this will give us, you know, that perspective, you know, where do we fall short? How can we improve?
Well, you know, what's interesting too, we have had some findings that exactly what you just said, the actions weren't falling short, but disseminating the information wasn't. right?
Mhm.
Like an employee saying they don't this and they don't that. And the company's like, we do offer that. We do. That
Yeah.
you can have that. Right. And it just turned out it was a right information flow problem. It just wasn't right
Exactly. Yeah.
in that onboarding or what have you, right? That this was available for you day one. We want you to have it and use it, right? This resource. So interesting what it can uncover. And Rick, I'm curious about Spectrum Thermal, right? Because you two are such very different operations. How are you guys seeing your pipeline hiring go right now?
It's kind of touch and go. It's like a 2-to-1, two candidates to one good one.
Mhm.
We have a pretty stable workforce right now, so we haven't had to hire anyone recently. Again, we're a small business, so
Mhm.
but one of the things we do struggle with is trying to balance wages and benefits versus market, and trying to understand what is our competition paying.
Mhm. So now that's not for pipeline. So then does that mean you're seeing seasoned folks leaving for what they report as more money? Is that what you're saying? You're doing like exit
We
interviews?
actually haven't. We want to avoid that.
What-
So it's
Proactive.
knowing, yeah. So you want to know what possibly is better. Are they getting the ability to get better offers?
Mhm.
So, and is it strictly based on wage, or
Mhm.
I've always personally struggled with, do they even consider the benefits when you are talking to someone about everything that you offer?
Sure. Sure.
It's, a lot of times you get the impression that the only thing that matters is the rate,
Mhm.
and not the rest of it doesn't matter, but it does.
Mhm.
So it's hard to,
Yeah.
in my opinion, sell that whole package, either in recruiting or in retention.
That's
It's an
great.
interesting thing. When we first started looking at the Job Quality Toolkit, Lindsay Brickle, who was on the line earlier, really challenged us. She said, we can't go out there and give people a way to assess, right, where they might be struggling, or give them a, PDF of hundreds of ideas and just say, hey, here's a menu, choose from it. She was like, no, we really need to have something there. And one of them was actually about exactly that, Rick, about the wage and benefit package and how to position it. And we realized that Polaris MEP didn't have at that point something to provide manufacturers with that could help them do a market study and communicate their benefits better. So one of the ironically things that happened with the Job Quality Toolkit was we started reflecting inwardly and saying, okay, we don't have a product quality that will help people solve this problem if they're facing it. So it's not an easy thing looking out there. Maria's got the great benefit of having an entire team that can do market studies for her, but there now are other folks who we've got on board who can kind of do that and help the communication. Even we had one company that had somebody come in and talk to employees who could potentially be retiring and talk to them about when's the right time. You've had these benefits. When's the right time to consider retirement so that you're not losing some really important things right now. If you waited a year or two more, you'd be gaining this much more. And that was a really interesting, unbiased, not an insurance company selling a product, but rather, okay, we're making the managers leave the room. Tell us,
Yeah.
what's making you, point your toes this way versus that way? How can we give you the right information? So if it is the right time for you to go, then go, enjoy. But if there could be a better time, here's the info you need. Yeah.
Right.
Really great. Well, I want to be respectful of your time. And if people have more questions, I hope that this will be the start of a conversation. These actually, what are these, Aaron? What are we looking at?
We're looking at 2 quotes from some folks who took the assessment. The first one is very direct. We want to be able to recruit and retain skilled employees, right? Who doesn't? The second one, a little bit more in depth into their kind of their ethos, right? Their management ethos, and that it was important to them that employees truly enjoyed their work lives, right? And that's what we were kind of joking about at the beginning there, Maria. You know, they do see a correlation between folks being more productive as a small business when the team is content, fulfilled, and feels heard, right? And I'm sure you can all agree on that. Again, nothing groundbreakingly new here, really just kind of putting things together in a package and a system that makes sense to follow. The same way we started at the beginning saying that you obviously measure product quality, you obviously have a system for doing so. You know, you don't just kind of go out there and you know, half-heartedly figure it out as you go. So the same it can be said for this, right? It's just a really nice, concise way to embark on that.
Absolutely. Well said, Aaron. And really, if we agree on why to become an employer of choice, then it's the how to achieve it. And being able to have this toolkit that isn't, again, just a, hey, here's a menu of tools, but rather something where you can hopefully draw on our services and our experiences so that we could tailor something and make sure, you know, leaning into the strengths that you've already got in the way you are attracting and continually upskilling and growing and retaining your skilled workforce so that those other areas don't become a drawback in the future. That's really what it's about. We'll go ahead and follow up after this program with an email that contains not only a link to this program video, but also to where you can start that online assessment process. You'll recall that pathway is starting with the online assessment, and then we look at the results together and we say, okay, do we really need a full talent and culture survey? Yeah, and this is why. Or has our company already been, you know, soliciting some of this information? If so, how do we pull that in and look at it through the drivers and go forward? But no matter what, our goal, you know, perfect world for Polaris MEP would be that we would really get more of our manufacturers in Rhode Island truly committed to becoming employers of choice and drawing on these tools to get themselves there. Thank you so much for your time today and for interacting with us.